That's not what I wanted to do. Braedyn Locke officially has the keys to the car, but will Phil Longo actually let him drive? I'm Rajeev. He's Justin. Here we go.
Welcome to the Bucky Report, your destination for all things Wisconsin Badgers. Authentic takes.
Oh my God.
Game analysis.
Touchdown Badgers! Ring one up!
And discussion from the fan perspective.
Woo-hoo!
Thanks for joining us and on Wisconsin.
Welcome into the Bucky Report. We are your hosts, Rajeev and Justin, back together on a Sunday evening to talk about all things Wisconsin Badgers. On today's show, the Badgers had a much-needed bye week while they prepare for their first road game of the year, a battle with West Coast Giants USC. With Braedyn Locke now in the starting lineup, what can we expect to see from this already sputtering offense? The Big Ten had an interesting week while we were on a break. What is the impression of the conference thus far, including our upcoming opponents? Justin, my Colts finally won a game. Sorry, Bill Woj. I know you're in the chat, and I know you're a Bears fan. Yikes. And I'm sure there are some Bears fans listening to this. And we really needed a win. The Colts really needed a win after getting abused by your and most people listening to this, their beloved Green Bay Packers. You guys got to win. We got to win. It's a good day. Justin, how are you?
I'm sorry to Bears fans, but there was no bigger, more obvious thing that was going to happen to me than Caleb Williams. He is Justin Fields. He is almost the exact same player. How? I just don't get it. That front office is just does not understand the concept of building a team.
I said it last year. I said it again. I don't think Caleb Williams is going to be the guy in the NFL. I just don't. I don't see it. I mean, CJ Stroud is a guy that. I mean, geez, when that's the guy that I wanted. Anthony Richardson, I also feel might not be the guy. But we digress. We are at the Bucky Report on Twitter, YouTube, and wherever you can find your podcast. If you like what we're doing, hit the subscribe button so you know when we make new content. We are a quarter of the way through the season at this point. Justin, a bye week that really couldn't have come at a better time. I mean, I feel like in general, we, coming off a loss like that, TVD goes down. Braedyn Locke now needs some time to get in as the starter. I mean, we'll start here. A quarter of the way through. I mean, we are, by the way, we are at the record that all of us predicted we would be at, which is 2-1. We are where we all predicted we would be. Now, things look very different than we predicted. Are you feeling, after a week removed from the Alabama game, are you feeling hopeful? Are you feeling somewhat excited? I want to know what you're feeling right now.
Well, we're not going to face a team as talented as Alabama the rest of the year. So to me, everything's in front of us. This team has to show growth. That's realistically what it comes down to. We need to see them find things they can hang their hat on. I brought this up in the Discord during the week that the issue is the running game is fine. It would be better, but the issue is that we don't have any bread and butter pass plays that we run that we consistently see guys getting caught on other than everybody running a button hook at the same time. It's
they love that button hook, don't they?
My God. And it's probably option routes. They're probably seeing the coverage and that's what they're dropping themselves into. But it's you guys have to have some structured plays that will work, against whatever defense. And they just have to be able, the quarterback has to be able to make a read. There's going to be a ballot. If you have to check down and throw to the running back, fine. But if these receivers can't figure out how to run the routes that they're supposed to be in certain situations, then we're screwed. Because we're 2 years in now, and if these guys still can't figure it out, how long do you go before you actually have somebody to do it? And I know I'm not putting it all on the receivers. I'm not putting it all on anything. It's a little bit of everything still, kind of like it was last year. I do think that in terms of knowing the offense, that Locke is an improvement in that regard. You noticed in that game, he was more willing to take shots downfield, but the accuracy is a problem. He has got to calm himself down over this next week and get used to playing again. Now that he's playing against a team listen, USC is going to have a decent pass rush. It's not going to be Alabama's pass rush. They don't have they don't have that level of physicality as a team. So and
we learned that. We learned a lot of that. We learned a lot about what USC was in the Michigan game. We're going to get into Braedyn Locke. Thanks for all of you that are joining us Chris Hartz, thank you. Colts for beating the Bears. Yes. I mean, boy, couldn't be happy about that. Evan Malone says, I'll be at the USC game on Saturday. We need to meet up. Evan, send me, if anyone's going to the USC game, send me a DM on Twitter. And yes, Evan, we'll definitely meet up. I'm definitely down to meet up with anyone who's out there. Would love to meet up with people that are going to the game. I'm going to try to be tailgating out there before, hopefully at the Badger Huddle, but they're sold out. I need to figure out how to get a ticket to that. And I also wanted to say that I'm planning on doing a video, like a vlog of the USC game. I'm going to put that together and kind of some cool stuff. And we'll just kind of release that as a midweek thing after the USC game. So we learned a lot about USC yesterday, Justin. We learned that they are not necessarily prepared for the physicality of the Big Ten, as you just mentioned. Physicality, it's different. I actually tweeted, I loved it. I'm like, welcome to the Big Ten. Welcome to the freaking Big Ten. I love that, and I don't root for Michigan, but I did root for Michigan yesterday because I wanted them to kind of get a little kick in the mouth, and we need to follow it up and do that. So let's specifically talk Braedyn Locke.
Sure.
Obviously, last year we saw him for a very short amount of time. We know what his limitations are, Justin. Right? We know that he's not really mobile like Tanner Mordecai was. Nor was Tyler Van Dyke. But they're not really running the read option with him, or at least I don't know if you expect it, but I don't really expect it.
I don't expect
So
it.
what do you expect to see from Braedyn Locke as far as production levels? Like how well do you think he can really do? And what kind of offense do you expect to see? What as in what differences from the first 3 weeks to now? You're Phil Longo. You've got this quarterback. What are you thinking is going to happen with him as far as plays and offense?
I am hopeful that with a week of prep time, he can be confident enough in his reads that we have him just make the easy play. Like what I want to see them do is I want to see them find him make the correct reads in this game against USC. And if it's not there, don't take it. We've noticed with him last year, accuracy can be an issue. He gets happy feet. His best game, I think he was like 52%. Now, I expect that to go up somewhat. It's never going to be super high. As William said, batted passes, he's too small and slow and has no arm. The arm is fine. The arm is fine for a college quarterback, but the batted passes are an issue. He stares down receivers. He did it against Bama. I don't expect it to be as glaring in this next game because I think that a lot of that can be, written up to the fact that he was playing against Bama and was not expecting to be in that game. But batted passes with him are always going to be an issue. Mm-hmm. And it's always going to depress his completion percentage somewhat. Because you think about it, 3 or 4 balls get batted, that can take you from being a 63% passer to being like a 58 or 56.
Can that be correct? No, do you think? I mean, is there like? Let me ask you this. I want your answer on that at all as well, and this one as well. The staring down the receiver. If I hope that a lot of you guys got the chance to watch some good Big Ten football this weekend because there was good Big Ten football out there. The Illinois-Nebraska game, as much as I hate that we saw those two teams ranked, that was a good football game, man. Those two teams are better than us. That's for damn sure. And you see Luke Altmaier, you see Dylan Raiola, and they're looking off their receivers constantly, right? They're looking off the safety here. They're not telegraphing their routes. Do you think that's something that can get corrected for Braedyn Locke this season? I mean, legitimately, do you expect that to improve that in the batted passes?
I think it depends on what type of game he's in. If USC is able to get home on us, I think he's going to struggle with his progressions. If the line holds up well in this game, I think he'll be okay. I think he'll be able to go through. One of the things that has to pick up is his internal clock has to jump, because I noticed that when we saw him in the fall camp practice that was open, he has a tendency to sit on the ball, and you can't do that. You get 3 seconds, and that ball has got to be moving.
And I think that will get better. That piece of it will get better. That's something that as he's having reps and more and more reps with the ones, that timing in the pocket, I expect to get better. I expect him to be able to step up in the pocket and to actually
they need to put an air horn or something on him and just be like, you got 4 seconds. If the ball's not out in that time, that horn goes off and you're dead. And just say, hey, this is your timer. If we have to build one into your head, we're going to do it, but it's going to get stuck in there where you know it, that I don't have time to be sitting here looking anymore. I don't care if you throw it out of bounds. Like, just get rid of the football. Just don't take a negative play. But I do think there is a chance that we see more explosive plays with him at quarterback, because I do think that he knows the offense better. And I think we saw him take some shots even last year when he had the opportunity to. So there is a chance that he could have a quality game. Do I think he's going to be a game breaker? No. I think we're going to see more of what we saw against Illinois last year, where he's, if we're lucky, he'll get around 60% with 230 yards and a couple of touchdowns. And that'd be a great game. Like if he has that against USC, I'd be happy with that. Especially because if we have that level of balance, we're probably running the football well too.
Is it maybe I'm having revisionist history, but I feel like when Tanner Mordecai got hurt last year, we were thinking, oh, Braedyn Locke, I think he can throw a better deep ball. And he did throw a couple better deep balls. Am I misremembering, or did we actually like the way he passed the ball a little bit last year?
I think we liked some of what he showed. Like there was occasionally he would have a nice throw where you're like, okay, where did that come from? Like that's a ball that translates. That's a high level throw at the college level. But there was also some times when you'd be like the batted passes, or he would make a bad read, or he just wouldn't be accurate in throwing. And it's like, these are things that need to be cleaned up. Like you've got to be able to be accurate, because you're not going to get a lot of easy chances against USC. There's enough athleticism on that field for them, and the defense has improved enough that if he has a shot, he's got to take it. And he's got to take what's there and move on and allow the game plan to work out. This is a game where we're probably going to have to grind a little bit. You don't want USC getting a lot of reps with it. They have too many good athletes, and that Moss is a good enough quarterback that if you give him enough chances, eventually he's going to find something.
Before the season started, you were very adamant about the lack of Big Ten quarterback play, lack of good Big Ten quarterback play. And I disagreed with you, and I think I've been proven to be correct, because Miller Moss looks pretty good. Luke Altmaier looks pretty good. Dylan Raiola looks pretty good.
There
are some good quarterbacks in this league, man.
They're significantly better than they were last year. That's as simple as that.
And here's where I'm going with this. I think my thought on Braedyn Locke is he needs to be that serviceable Wisconsin quarterback that is not going to be an NFL quarterback. Exactly. He just needs to be that guy. Now, he can't run like Jack Cohn, but he's got to be that guy that can just do what it needs to do. Lean on the running game. And a lot of this goes on Phil Longo. He needs to call the right plays. He needs to install the right offense that's going to work with Braedyn Locke's skill set. There was a comment up here that I really liked, and I was thinking about this as well, and now I've lost it. It was about the jet sweep. Someone said, put in a jet sweep. There was a time, Justin, when we ran that jet sweep way too much. But can we see something back? Can we be a little more inventive? We talk about this every week. We've got to be more inventive. But I do think Locke can be a guy this year that can get us to roughly close to where the record we expected to see. I don't think we're going to be 8-4 anymore. I think it's a 6-6, 7-5 at best. Realistic best. But I still think he can be that guy. And as far as the little aspects of his game, Justin, I think the accuracy, the issues he saw last week, I think some of that will get cleaned up. That's really about the reps and the timing. And you've got a lot of guys running slants, and you got the slot guys. You got to have the timing down with them. And I think that's part of it. So that piece of it to me does get cleaned up, as does the internal clock. What I don't think gets cleaned up is staring down his receivers and the batted passes. I don't think those get cleaned up. And I think we're going to have to live with that. And yes, that means we're going to see some batted balls on big downs. And yes, that means we're going to see some interceptions. Can he make the throws? I think he can, especially the throws that the Wisconsin quarterback has been asked to make this year, which is not really that crazy because the way the offense has been. So I think he can be that guy. And I do expect him to beat teams that need to be like that we can beat. The Purdue's of the world, the Northwesterns of the world, the Minnesotas of the world. Like those are games we need to win. And I don't feel any differently about those games specifically. It's the other ones I think I'm concerned about. But 2 weeks with Longo and Fickell clearly, being upset about the Alabama game, hopefully wanting to make some changes. I think we are going to be pleasantly surprised with what we see.
I think staring down the receivers can get a little bit better. I think when he's more comfortable and kind of understands, because like some of that stuff is built in. Like you look the safety off because it's part of the play in order to be able to open the other guy up. Like there's things that he's going to be more comfortable in doing because he's going to be, drilling those all week. now, or the last 2 weeks to get ready for it. So this game plan will be ready. Like they've seen now what 3 games, 4 games of 3 games of USC playing now to know what their defensive concepts are and have an idea what they're going to try and do. It's not like they were holding back against Michigan, although can make the argument that there was 0 passing threat, so you have no idea what their coverage concepts are against a really good team other than watching LSU against them. I think we learned that LSU stinks minus their quarterback. So I really don't know. I think he's going to be improved. I think he'll be solid in this game. I don't expect him to be a train wreck. I don't expect him to set the world afire with what he does. I think there's a chance that he looks more explosive than what Van Dyke did, because Van Dyke was not explosive. Like, most of his passes were within 10 yards. And we've been there before, and that's a miserable, miserable existence when you have a quarterback that is afraid to attack a defense. So I think that when you look at it, Locke is willing to do that. I will say this. I realize that there are certain teams that we feel like we have a good chance of beating. I don't think that Iowa, Rutgers, or Nebraska are that far away where I look at it and I'm like, these are unwinnable games. Like, every one of those teams has deficiencies. We saw with Nebraska, they can't run the football. And I'll take my chances with our secondary against them with the fact that they're going to be very one-dimensional. They were terrible against Illinois running. I think they had like 20-some carries for like 80 yards.
Illinois' defense
is good.
Pretty beefy up front, man.
They didn't attack as much as you would have thought, especially given how they looked in overtime.
Yeah.
They unleashed the hounds. Rayola was just in over his head.
Couple good comments I want to get to here. Bob Sacamano. Bob, thanks for joining. He said, stop. But he needs to be serviceable. That worked 10 and 20 years ago when we had stud RBs, offensive line, and great defense. They have neither. So, Justin, I actually think this is a really interesting point that Bob brings up. Like, I am someone who's thinking, okay, lean on the run game. We don't have the same run game that we had in years. We certainly don't have the run defense we've had in the years past. So if he is a serviceable quarterback and he does kind of he kind of just does what he needs to do, nothing special, nothing crazy, and he protects the ball most importantly, do you think we have the other pieces around him to actually make an impact this year?
I think it depends on what Bob views as serviceable. I'm not talking about Tolzien. I'm not talking about
we did say
in the past. I'm talking about nationally what a serviceable quarterback is. And like I said, that's like 230 yards and a couple of touchdowns. That's a good game for a Wisconsin quarterback normally. He's got to be that level of passing threats in that game against USC if they want to have a chance in that game. He's going to have to be able to push the ball down the field when it's there. And he's going to have to take the easy stuff and check down when it's not. And just take your 5 yards. And that's what this offense is going to have to be. They're going to have to be able to pass enough to keep the running game solid. I do think the offensive line I don't believe in the running backs, but I do think the offensive line is good enough.
Yeah.
Which is the way I look at it. There's no running back in our room right now that I look at that I think is going to rush for 120 yards on 17, 18 carries. We don't have that guy, at least not yet.
Maybe
the young guys might, one of the young guys might turn into that, but I don't. There's the other aspect of this that I want to say is very good chance of happening is there's a chance USC beats themselves twice. Like that's an emotional letdown the way that game ended for them. They played hard that game. They came back. They took the lead, and then they ended up coughing it up. And now you got beat up by a really physical, run-heavy team in Michigan, and you're going to have to do it again this week. And that's not as easy to do, especially when emotionally you might be a little drained. And Wisconsin is not going to be a team that they're going to look at and be, "Ooh, I'm so excited about this game. We're playing it." Like they had aspirations for big things. And Wisconsin is kind of like one of those games that they would have in previous years probably been up for. Based off of what we've been the last couple of years, I don't think that it probably has that effect on them. I don't think they're going to play up to us. I think they're going to play down to us.
I think Michigan got a bit of a, after their loss to Texas, and Texas is a very good team. before the season, no one thought USC was going into Michigan and winning that game. No one. And that's ultimately what happened. Now, going into the week, things were different because of what USC did. We've seen that LSU is really not that good, at least on paper. We've seen that Michigan still doesn't have a quarterback, but they are really good in certain aspects of the game. Their defense, they're running the ball. Like, they can do the things they need to do. And USC is probably a little close to what we thought they were. They're not world beaters like that. I think that ultimately there is that. Now there's a couple more comments that I want to get to in here. Bo Dragon, which I agree with. USC is going to be playing hard after choking away the Michigan game. I
think they have a letdown.
I don't.
There's a chance they could have a hangover and be sloppy in this game.
I mean, obviously, I hope so, but I really don't. Just because I think they realize they just went to the Big House in their first Big Ten game and got kicked in the teeth. Now, they didn't lose by a lot, but physically they did. I think they are feeling like they've got a point to prove now. Like, hey, we are not going to just be a part of this conference and let teams push us around. Like, we have physicality too. They're going to be playing with that. But we have to equal that. We got to equal that, and we have to be better. We have to be more physical than them, and we have to out that.
But USC hasn't been a physical team the last several years. Them getting beat up by Michigan kind of proved that point that they're still not there. They wanted to get in this game and play in the trenches with them, and Michigan beat them up. So it's one of those games where the way I look at it is,
but would we beat them up like Michigan did if they wanted to fight hard in the trenches?
I mean, the way I look at this is you kind of have the aspect of Wisconsin having some semblance of a passing game that gives them a little bit more deception in what's going on a given play versus what Michigan was doing, where it's effectively like, hey, we're Nebraska playing the option with with Tommy Frazier back there. Like, they didn't have a passing game. They threw for 32 yards in that game. Like, they lined up and USC knew they were running the football and they still couldn't stop them. I mean, at least Wisconsin's going to have the option to be able to throw the football down the field a little bit if they want to get that aggressive. I don't know how they weren't playing 10 guys in the box against Michigan. Like, seriously, I would play one deep safety and be like, prove you're going to be able to beat us through the air, because I don't think you can throw the football.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. A couple more comments here. Robert Torrance says increased role for Dupree. Bo Dragon said this about Dupree as well. Look, I was texting Ryan and Justin yesterday, and I said that I feel like I have this feeling. It could be a crazy feeling. It's a hot take. It's nothing that I've no any reason to think is actually going to happen. But I feel like a breakout game for Dupree at some point soon is to me, it's not out of the question. I feel like he's been getting a few looks. He breaks something, they're going to give him a few more looks. He breaks something. I just feel like he's going to fold into this offense because at the end of the day, Justin, they're clearly not impressed with any of the three. Let's be honest. Like, Kate Yakimelli has been playing well, but they can't be ultimately impressed with what they're seeing from a yards per carry perspective or just overall explosiveness from and ball security from Ches Malusi and even Tawi Walker to an extent. I feel like they're looking for someone to do this. So I still think you can. I wanted to put this up there in case you've heard anything, but a couple comments here about something that Mabry put up on his Instagram, and Marty Griffin just says he posted that it's time on Insta. I have not seen this, so I'm not confirming that, but are they setting the table for a swap at QB1? I don't think so. No, I don't think so at all. I think maybe it's time for him to get backup reps. Maybe that's what it's time for. And that's obviously happening. He's going to have a bigger role in practice for sure. But no, I really don't feel like that's a thing.
I think it's him getting an opportunity to finally prove himself a little bit. So it's what Ryan talked about when we were talking about him in camp. He didn't look great in fall camp, but he also was playing with the threes, and the offensive line was terrible. So what's finally happening is he's going to have cohesive reps with a, second string offensive line that's actually solid, and he can run plays and get through his progressions and throw the football and get some growth. He is not ready to be playing. I would be in utter shock if he came out as the number one quarterback for this game. Number one, we're playing USC, and that would be a huge game for him to come walking in for that. But I would expect that he's gotten far more opportunity to kind of show what he has. I would think that it's cleaner pockets and he's getting the chance to actually throw the football like he's used to or was in high school. So he's got a chance to really accelerate his growth. And my instinct is if we're going to see him this year, it's going to be like last couple games of the year. He's going to be kind of rolled in if Locke just doesn't look like he's got it. And they're going to say, all right, we've gotten a month and a half of prep time for you to kind of get used to this offense and be ready to go. But it's not going to be soon. Like, I would be shocked given how few reps he took in camp to be able to do that.
Completely agree. Daltreed says, I want to see Yak more with more carries before I would worry about Dupree. I think that's true. Like, let's give the guy's he's earned his flowers this year. Like, let's give him an increased role. Bill Walsh says, I want to talk about this a little next. He says, how good was the offensive play calling by both Illinois and Nebraska? Yeah, it was. Longo sucks. I'm sorry. So I'm gonna start there with Longo. Like, do you feel like he is going to be able to turn this offense over to Braedyn Locke in an effective manner that's actually going to sort of, as I said at the top of the show, give him the keys to the car and let him actually drive this thing? Do you have confidence in Longo's ability to work over the next 9 weeks with Braedyn Locke?
I'm hopeful. I honestly don't know. Like, I was not expecting it to be this difficult for them to get things flowing with this offense. I wasn't like when we came in this year, I wasn't expecting us to be world beaters with the offense. I expected us to be competent and be able to score and make plays. And I don't know if we're going to see that. So, I mean, it's not all on Longo. Some of it is on the players for just not executing, but I don't think he's been particularly great calling his game so far this year. And maybe part of that was by design going into the Alabama game. You know, there's people that have said that he called the game very differently against them. Maybe that's the case. I don't know. We'll see. They're going to get a lot of opportunity now to prove, because I don't think there's any point in hiding anything the rest of the season. You had your big game against Alabama. It's out of the way. Now you better be ready to go. Now the games are conference games, and you got to be ready to get it done. So I think we'll see a step up from last year. I don't know how much. I'm a little concerned with what we're going to see. But if Locke is capable of being solid. Like we said, Jack Cohn, I think that he's capable of having that type of season. He's a solid passer. He's just got to get the completion percentage up.
I recognize that I often wear rose-tinted glasses when I talk Badgers because I'm very hopeful. And yeah, I do want to believe that Longo's going to put something together here, a game plan for Locke that is effective, and he had 2 weeks to do it, and hopefully we'll see. And, you know, I mean, it's who knows. I had a comment on Twitter from Tyler Strieber, and I wanted to bring it up and ask a piece of his comment and get your take on this. He says, does Braden's struggles and the fact that Longo is all in on the Locke family make you question his talent evaluation abilities at all? The other part of his question was asking about Landon Locke's ceiling, and do you feel like Locke's ceiling is any higher, or, you know, what do you think about, like, obviously, you know, this is his guy, right? I mean, Braedyn Locke is his guy. TVD was his guy. Tanner Mordecai was his guy. Like, how do you feel about him with Locke in this question from Tyler?
I don't think Van Dyke or Mordecai were his guys. I'll be blunt on that. Like, those are rentals that you think you can make work with what you have. I do, when I look at the guys that I call his guys, I look at high school recruits that you're going to take in and groom. And that's what I look at. And because then you're looking at everybody in the country and saying, these are the guys that I've picked out of everyone that's available in this class. So the way I look at it, other than Mabry, I have not been particularly impressed with his eye for talent. Mm-hmm. I feel like we've seen guys that are very physically limited athletically. And it seems like he likes guys that are intellectual guys, but I don't understand why you always have to sacrifice something athletically to get the other. It's like Paul Christ always getting the statue pocket passing quarterbacks. Why can't you have somebody that's an athletic that can actually move around a little bit and also throw and look through an offense? Like
Nick Evers, maybe?
It doesn't have to be even that level of quarterback. Like, I want somebody who is just capable of grabbing 5 or 10 yards if it's not there and breaking the pocket. And we always seem to get these guys Landon is not a run threat at all. Locke or Braden is not really. Braden's undersized. It's like, how are these guys the guys that you're targeting that like out of, obviously in our room, the two most athletic quarterbacks that we currently have are LaCrue and Mabry. And it's not really that close athletically.
Well, I mean, there are going to be people, Justin, that call for Mabry there are already people that have been calling for him to start. I mean, at some point, maybe it's time to take a chance. Who knows? Tyler Schubert follows up his question and asks this one: is it fair to fully judge Longo when the starting quarterback got hurt in both of his first 2 seasons? In my opinion, absolutely it is, because before those guys were hurt, we were seeing the same things that we saw from him the entire time he's been here. So, I mean, if I would have seen anything different from him with Tyler Van Dyke the first 2 weeks and then in Alabama, then the first 2 games, if we would have seen anything different from him, I would have been like, okay, we don't know what he could have done. But I feel like the writing was on the wall in the first 2 games there that, there were issues. And yeah, I think you absolutely can judge him, even though starting quarterbacks got hurt.
Yeah, my view on it is effectively, when you look at it, Longo has been a guy who, no matter who has been at quarterback for him, the issues are there for either guy. And that's why I look at it and I'm like, some of this has to be on his plate, because last year, Mordecai, the offense struggled. Braden came in, took over. It struggled more. This season, TVD, offense was fairly efficient. I mean, they were able to move the football, but it lacked all explosion. And again, we look like we can't move the football when we want to necessarily, or the way we'd want to. Like, you can't rely on 15-play drives to be able to score against good teams. It's just going to be super difficult to do that. So he's got to find a way to make this offense work in a manner that allows them to have flexibility. If you want to hold on to the football and be able to be efficient in that regard, awesome. But you need to be able to also be able to attack and move the football quickly when you need to. And that's something that we really struggle with.
All right. So, excuse me. Let's get into a little bit more about next week's kind of expectations. We'll do our predictions midweek, but ultimately, we saw USC. What happened with USC yesterday? We know that they had the loss. We talked a lot about the game and what we need to be doing. What do you give me, like, some kind of an idea of where your head is at right now, at least with score prediction? Like, how are you feeling about? Do you actually? By the way, it's a 14.5. The line is 14.5 USC right now. I'll go first on this, and I'll give you a second. Yes, I think that's crazy. The problem with that is when you see that and then you instantly think, oh, they're baiting you to bet on Wisconsin, which is why you go the other way. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it just scares me. I think that's a high line.
I think
we're going to be able to ultimately, though, that line and what the bookmakers are saying is that they believe in no way, shape, or form in Tyler and Braedyn Locke's ability to run this offense. And our ability, Phil Longo's ability to actually score points on a USC defense that really hasn't been that impressive. Like they did look good in the LSU game. They did. But there were times yesterday that did not look good. I mean, ultimately, Michigan had like 10 yards of offense going into the 3 minutes left in the game or something. I mean, in the second half, at least. I think that it's a closer game than that. I do think that USC is probably going to beat us, as much as it's going to kill me. And maybe in later in the week, I'll make a prediction that thing says we're going to win. I think that we will be able to run the ball, but not as well as maybe want to. I think we're still going to have issues stopping the run, but I think the bend but don't break defense will work at points. But at the end of the day, we are playing Lincoln Riley. We are playing Miller Moss, and they are going to score points. The question is, can we? I think it's more of a 10-point game, to be honest. But I'm not really feeling like that positive about the whole game in general. I before the season, I picked us to win this game, but things have changed. I'm a little worried still.
I like I said, I think it's probably closer to like an 8-point game. I just think there's a chance that USC is just not very good in this game too. And I don't think that we're going to absolutely shoot ourselves in the foot. Like, for better or worse, I think this is one of those games where we come out and we play really milquetoast. Like, it's just like,
yeah, no, you're so right. You're so right.
Like, we end up scoring 17 points and you're like, we end up losing 24-17 or something. And it's like, okay, that was like the least gratifying loss ever. Like, there's nothing that we could hang our hat on again. The defense wasn't exposed, but it wasn't great. The offense wasn't great, but, did some things. Like, we'll have a couple of long touchdown drives. And you're just like, God, there's just nothing that makes me really enjoy this. Like, we couldn't have one big play or something like that. But yeah, it's a game that I look at that I think I don't think we're not going to get blown off the field. I would be shocked if USC comes out that clean after that game.
Would it really shock you though, Justin? If we got like beat off the field, it wouldn't shock you if we lost by 25 points?
That would absolutely shock me. I don't think there's a chance that happens.
I'll tell you what, I don't think it's going to happen, but truthfully, I'm not going to be surprised if this is a 35-10 game. I'm not going to be surprised. I just feel like we are what we are right now, and that's the reality.
Yeah, but this isn't Alabama. This is a mediocre USC team that does have some talent, but I don't think that they're that good from that standpoint. Like, that I don't look at them rolling out on the field and just being like, we can make plays. They have to have things go right for them in order to do it.
Couple predictions. I put Zach's up there earlier. I think he was 35-14. Dark Ray says USC wins 31-10.
Fan base is really in a rough spot.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see, right? A comment here that I wanted to put up now. I lost it there. Bo Dragon. We keep talking about how the linebackers are better, but I haven't seen any making any plays. What are your thoughts on this? The linebackers have got a little talk lately. I mean, we've talked a little bit about it, but we need to talk more about it.
I think we've talked about the guys who I think have looked better, which are Tackett and Allegro have been flashing. The other guys have really been rough so far. Like, they're not as aggressive and downhill as we'd like to see Chaney and Jaheim Thomas. And I think the edge guys have been largely just limited in terms of what they've had. It's almost like they've been asked to just keep contained. Like, don't attack. Just sit here and wait for them and make sure nobody's trying to break. Now, part of that is you're playing against, a team in Alabama who you do not want to give up contain, because that's when a 30-yard touchdown run happens with, Milroe. So in this case, I do expect them to pin their ears a little bit more, because Moss really isn't a threat to run. I think those guys are going to attack more. We'll see how that translates. I don't know how much of a difference it makes, but they're going to have to up the blitz game in this game. They're going to have to find ways to get home.
Look, I've been really consistent about that, and I will say, I said it before the Alabama game, and I'm going to say it again. And I said to you guys yesterday in the chat, we need to lean on our secondary, not because I think they're amazing, but I think they are the best. It's because that's the best we've got.
Yeah.
And the only chance you have if you watched that game yesterday, Justin, I can't tell you how many times I saw Michigan sending 5 at like a good, their front 4 is good. And they sent 5. They blitzed Moss constantly, and they disguised where that 5th person was coming from. It didn't come from the same way every time. It wasn't always a corner, wasn't always on the outside. It was they set up in what appeared to be a nice base, and then they attacked. We have to do that. We have to be willing to put our cornerbacks on an island and deal with what happens from that, because if you don't, you're going to get carved up. This is a Lincoln Riley offense at the end of the day. I mean, so whatever happened in the Michigan game, we've got to clean that up. And I just feel like I legitimately think that we can be disruptive on defense, but it requires Tressel to take chances. It requires Fickell to not be afraid of leaving our corners on an island. You're going to have to do it. If you leave that guy on the spot, and because we know, Justin, our front 4 is not getting home. We know this.
Yeah.
How they are going to shred us. And I really hope that doesn't happen. So back to the original question of linebackers, it's time to show us, right? I mean, I think we've seen flashes. We've seen flashes from various people. Let's see how it is in this game, because this game, it's the first conference game we're going to play this year, and we need to send a message. Zach Bartz, you put a comment up here. In the Michigan game, I believe Moss went like 28 of 53 for passing. they're going to pass more than run by a mile. That's true. But I just think at the end of the day, if we don't get pressure on him, they're going to pass us to death and they're going to be successful.
The one takeaway that I had from the game against Michigan is that they nickel and dimed him, and Michigan made him. And that's effectively the defense is like, I'll hate it if this is how it plays out. But if I could see Tressel doing that, I'm like, wait, we're going to play a bunch of cover 2, and we're going to basically make you just have to grind down the field, a bunch of zone. And hopefully you make a couple mistakes, because we're going to make you have to sit here and grind your way down the field, and we don't trust your run game. And maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Like I don't love that approach, if I'm being honest. I think you're going to have to be able to get home in obvious passing situations to some extent,
or at least the threat of it, for goodness sakes. Like,
yeah, I don't know what we do there. Like Tressel, for me, I'm so shocked at how it seems like conservative he is in the first half of games. And I don't think you can play teams like USC that way. You can't get away with it, because suddenly they'll score 2 touchdowns to start the game, and now you're down 14 points with an offense that you don't trust to score the football.
Yeah. I mean, and the one thing that has to be said, and a couple people put it in the chat, like, we're not Michigan. Yeah. We don't have the offensive line Michigan has. We don't have the defensive line Michigan has. We don't have the run threat quarterback that Michigan has. We don't have the secondary. We're not Michigan. So we're going to have to play an amazing game to beat this team. And that's why I think you see a lot of the score disparities you're seeing, because while Michigan, it definitely got rocked by Texas, and they had a lackluster performance against Arkansas State. Like, they still have athletes that we don't have. That's just a fact. I mean, I hate to say that, but that's just where we are. And I'm not saying we can't beat USC. I just feel like, we're going to have to play a great game. And the way you play a great game is by taking chances. Be brave, because you're not going to beat them if you just do the status quo. So it's got to be now. I agree with you about the milquetoast thing. Like, that's part of it. Like, offensively, we need to keep the ball. We need to move the ball. We need to run the ball. But it's defensively, I think we really have to step up our game if we're going to have any shot at really doing this. Let's talk about forward looking a little bit, Justin. Like, the rest of the season at this point, we know that Braedyn Locke's sort of starting quarterback for the rest of the year. At least it's not going to be TBD, because he tore his ACL. Very sad. What do you need to see from this team to feel good about the season? Like, people are talking about 5-7, 6-6. Like, what the definition of success has now kind of changed a little bit. But what do you need to see to feel good about the rest of this season?
I think we need to see growth. We want to see some of these young guys get in that can actually help and give us something to look forward to next year. So, like, if Locke can suddenly show that he's got some ability and that he's capable of being a guy who's shown growth from last year to this year, and that he's capable of being somebody we can look at as a potential starter next year, that would be amazing. So any of the receivers to show a pulse other than Will Pauling. I mean, part of that is just opportunity. Most of the guys aren't being given opportunity, and it's hard for me to look at it and be like, you guys don't have ability when you're not even looking in your area. Like, we know Green's not going to be separating and running 5 yards ahead of whoever's covering him downfield. You got to give him opportunity to make plays.
Yeah, give him a chance. Give him a chance. 50-50 balls. Like, you got to do something with him for sure. So that's one thing I'm really looking forward to this week is seeing the All-22 myself and actually seeing what the receivers do. Because I want to get a sense of their separation they can create. I'm going to watch Tretch a lot and see how that goes. And I'm very eager to talk to you about that after. And I think that we'll see. I agree with you about the growth in youth. Like, I want to see more playing time for them. You kind of mentioned this, but like, we're not going to grow. We can't be successful next year without really taking big steps this year. There's a lot of auditioning happening. Phil Longo's auditioning for his job. Braedyn Locke is auditioning to us to not have us go to the transfer portal next year. So like, there's a lot of people that are trying. And when you're in that situation, you're going to have your best stuff out there. You're going to see your back's up against the wall. Like, what do you got? So Phil Longo, what do you got? That's what I want to know. Like, that's what I want to see to feel good about this season. I need to see that we have an offensive coordinator that we thought we were getting when Phil Longo showed up. I want to see an offense that's inventive and exciting and explosive. I don't want to see dink and dunk stuff Now, that being said, I recognize that I just said you got to do that a little bit in the USC game. That's fine, but we can still have explosive and dynamism in our offense, even though we're going to be leaning on the run. Okay, that's fine. But I need to see what this guy can really bring. So that's what I'm to the point where it's like, show me what you got now. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like we've been talking for weeks about what we expected, what we're seeing, how disappointed we've been. Like, does Longo still want to be here? Because I need to see it. And I don't think it has to be like amazingly successful. He has to be incredible. He needs to show growth. Like you said it well, we got to have growth from the right players. I want to see different things, different wrinkles, because we need something to be excited about going into next year now. Right. And I'm already thinking about that and how we're losing a lot of talent next year too. And it's a weird time to be a Badger fan right now.
Yeah. And I will say this, people are going to start saying we need to throw all these young guys out there. I'm advocating for the guys that are ready to play. I'm not advocating let's just chuck guys out there to get them reps so that they have some experience for next year, because I just think that you have to be able to be ready to see the field in order to do it. We have a bunch of offensive linemen that, for better or worse, are going to go into next season probably not having seen any real reps this year. We're going to have a bunch of redshirt freshmen. It is what it is. Unless we go to the portal, a lot of those young guys are going to be what end up taking over. Unfortunately, it's going to be going into next season. It could be a tough season. Like, the offensive line is going to, maybe those guys are super talented and we end up being advanced, but next year's offensive line is going to kind of be a work in progress for sure.
That's the one part of next year you're like, boy, that could be tough. But we believe in the youth. I think we all agree that Kevin Hayward's going to be a guy, and there's definitely some growth. Boy, there is a lot of hate for the team vest. I don't love it either, by the way, but the team vest is getting a lot of talk in our chat right now about the attire that Luke Fickell wears for every game. But yeah, I could take that or leave that, honestly. Comparisons to PJ Fleck, I don't like that. I don't know who that was, but somebody said that.
As long as he's not spouting it off all the time, I don't care. It's a shirt.
It is.
I don't care. Yeah. Like, if he's plastering it all over everything, like row the boat,
that's why you can't
nonsense. Then I would be losing my mind right now.
By the way, those videos of him, of him like running into his locker room and it is just ridiculous. PJ Fleck, he's ridiculous. Let's get into that a little bit. Let's talk about the rest of the conference. Big weekend, Nebraska, Illinois on Friday night. I talked about that. Incredible game. Honestly, it was a good game. I hate to say it, but Brett Bielema's got those guys playing real well, as does Matt Rule. And the Nebraska game, you have been very you talk a lot about that. You don't really think Nebraska's quite where I think they might be to an extent. I think you were right. Like, Nebraska definitely showed a lot of their weaknesses in that Illinois game. But to be fair, Illinois played really well too. Illinois is not on our schedule. Nebraska is on our schedule. Where are you at on them right now after that game, and sort of how the conference lays out now and our schedule lays out? Are you feeling better or worse about any of the other teams on our schedule?
I honestly, I need to see what this team looks like with Locke at the helm. Like, it's really hard for me to say anything until I know what we're going to actually look like. Right now, I'm not feeling super confident. I'll say that. But if Locke comes out and looks competent and the offense seems to, maybe he's a jolt to the offense. If that's what ends up happening, that could be great for us. I think that some of the things that I felt about Nebraska are accurate, and exactly what I felt about Dylan Raiola, what I thought his shortcomings were going to be this year, played out exactly in overtime.
Dude is very good, though. He is
very good. But once they sent pressure at him late in that overtime, he collapsed.
Yeah, he's a freshman. He's going to be incredible.
That's what I'm saying, though. That's what I'm saying. When you have a freshman in high-pressure situations, they do stupid things that you don't know. They don't know how to react because they get tunnel vision because teams do start coming after them. And Illinois played that overtime exactly the way I would have if I was a coach, which was, we're going to come after you, and if we get beat, we get beat. But we're going to take our shots, and we're coming down your throat to make you prove it. And that's exactly what ended up happening. They came right up the middle. He got flustered and suddenly it was 3rd and 42 or something like that, 2nd and 42, and then 3rd and 29. Like
that was wild. That was wild. But look, I mean, I think someone put in here about, Nebraska only looks good because of Raiola. Yeah. Well, that's what it takes to become a better team in this. In
he's going to be a really good player. I'm not saying he's not going to be good.
If they keep Dylan Raiola for the next few years until he's eligible to the NFL, he's going to be a pro. And I think Altmaier could be a guy. I mean, I'm telling you, I was really impressed with both of those guys. And the reason that I'm talking about them so much is because it makes me jealous, and it makes me realize that we don't have that. We don't have that. We didn't have that with TVD. We don't have that with Braedyn Locke. I think Michigan is a team that they're another great game. USC Michigan, fantastic. Michigan can't throw, but boy, oh boy, do they have trenches. They have got the trenches covered, and it's really nice to see that. Like, I wish we had that. Again, it makes me recognize what we don't have when I see teams play like that. And that's a little tough.
I think they have kind of 8-4 written all over them. And I think that's going to be because I think Oregon and Ohio State are going to take them down. And then I think there's a game where it's just going to bite them, the fact that they can't throw the football, where somebody plays them tough. Maybe they don't get up for the game as much as they should. And the lack of passing ability when they need it to is going to be a problem for them.
The one thing we do know about the Big Ten yesterday, Minnesota still sucks. Good news. No surprise.
And Indiana, I don't know what's going on there, but man, that dude goes for blood.
Yeah, Indiana is. Look, I mean, they've got
anybody, but
they play Maryland next week. Then they play Northwestern. Then they finally host Nebraska. Their schedule doesn't really even get.
I think they'll beat Nebraska.
Yeah, their schedule doesn't get exciting until early November. By the way, when they play Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks, Indiana is a team that could have a very good record because they're going to beat up.
It's going to be a lot of fluff.
They have been destroying bad teams. That's the thing. Like, they haven't played anybody, but they're crushing them.
Yeah,
we didn't play anybody until Alabama, and we didn't crush them. I think so. Sometimes people are very quick to judge Indiana and say that they're they haven't played anybody. But okay, but that's their schedule, and they are mowing teams down. I think that there's something there with Indiana that is impressive to me. No other big surprises yesterday, other than, of course, Iowa certainly beating Minnesota was something fun to watch, but no other real surprises. I think the Big Ten is shaking out. Interesting. Oregon, they had a bye week this week. We don't know what they're really looking like after their kind of drubbing of their rivals, Oregon State. Oregon State, who would beat Purdue. Purdue's still horrible. So, I mean, I think there are wins for us, by the way, on the schedule. I'm seeing Northwestern, put up 5 points against Washington. I think we'll beat Northwestern. I think we'll beat Purdue. I think we'll beat Minnesota. Only need one more to get to a bowl. Just got to come one more.
Robert Sorensen, I'm excited for Cam Miller and Hilton. I would agree with that. I think Hilton's having a heck of a senior season, and then he's a guy who could come in and play potentially as a true freshman. It would not shock me to see him see the field. Now, he's going to have to do a lot of work to do it, but I think there's a chance that he's that level of player. We need people on the outside that can actually make plays.
Yeah.
So there's opportunity there.
When you have 2 to 3 classes of Fickell stacked up, I firmly believe that we're going to see a marked improvement of this team. I mean, I guess, there are people out there, talking about Fickell. Listen, I'm not that guy, and I don't think you're that guy either. Fickell's our guy. I'm very much behind him, and I just want to see what the coordinators do the rest of the year. But I mean, this is why, though. This comment, that's why I'm so high on Luke Fickell, is because we're getting Eugene Hilton. We're getting Cam Miller. We're getting these other guys. Our recruiting classes are stacking up.
What I'll say is that, yes, I agree with that. And people that will sit there and start talking about the transfer portal guys that he brought in, stop. These guys were brought in to spot fill holes. They're not guys that were coming in to be difference makers. They were to cover up discrepancies or inadequacies in the current roster. The fact that they're out on the field tells you that there were problems with some of the personnel that we had. So you need to take a look at this. And when we look at guys like Pius or Lowry, we were hopeful that they'd be solid to good, and maybe they're not. And that's fine, but don't judge them in the same light of guys that were like plan A targets for this team from high school kids. Heiberger, Anelu, You know, you have guys in another really good linebacker class coming in this next year with Ains and Posa. Like, you have a ton of young talent coming on the defensive side. You have some really nice talent coming in on the offensive side. Nizy Davis, another really incredible tight end candidate. That's a guy that can come in and be a really good player. Those are the guys that this staff is banking on building their team with. Those are not like transfer portal guys. It's not like they spent 2 years recruiting those guys. And a lot of the times do we think this guy can help us? Yes or no? Okay, go get him. Like, they cannot do the level of in-depth reviewing of players that they can with the high school kids, where they can just sit on them and be like, all right. And they don't have 4 years to develop them into really good players. Like, this team is going to get a lot more athletic over the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. And that's something that people just need to understand. There's going to be a lot of talent that comes in. I will say I'm not totally sold on the coordinators. Maybe that changes. I think my issue with Tressel is more that his defense requires athleticism, and we just lack it right now. So I think that he's trying to make work what he's got, but I think he's struggling to come up with a defensive scheme to work with our limitations.
And I think you can see that when the guys that we have made big flashes, like Lucas, Curtis, like, you know, even Elijah Hills, you'll see a little more athleticism of those guys, and those guys are the ones flashing. And I think it goes hand in hand to what you're talking about, how like you need the athletes for Tressel's system. So no doubt about that. All right, we're going to wrap the show there, Justin. Again, if you're going to the USC game, send me a DM on Twitter. Would love to meet up with anyone going to the game beforehand for some drinks. Go Badgers. It's going to be great to see. I'm going to do a video blog of that game as well. And hopefully I'll be on the reaction show from inside the stadium, just on my little, at least for a few minutes to hopefully celebrate a victory.
I don't know if we win, you might not want to be doing it.
I mean,
then again, they're fans. It's not like they have diehard fans.
If we win, I'm definitely going to be on there. That'll be great. Justin, any final thoughts before we close the show?
Yeah, guys, just listen. None of us are happy with where this is at. I'm not sitting here telling you to give this team an opportunity to prove themselves because I'm backpedaling. I'm just saying we had high aspirations that this would come in and be a day one fix, and it's just not. So you deal with it. You adjust and you move forward in the manner that you can to try and make this the best that we possibly can. Hopefully we see some glimmers of hope going forward, that we have guys that prove that they deserve the opportunity and showcase some skill. And if that's the case, maybe we find a few, diamonds that we weren't expecting this season, where a guy like Tackett goes in and really starts to grow and show off and become a playmaker. Maybe Lucas finds his way onto the field and becomes a really good player. Maybe you have some of the young defensive linemen finally get to the point, and Willer and Dylan Johnson, who earn more playing time as the season goes on. And if that's the case, you have those guys, prove themselves. Maybe we get to a bowl game, those guys get more opportunity and start to flash that they look like they're going to be players for us.
Yeah, no doubt. All right. A couple quick things here. Yes. Thank you everyone for telling me to enjoy the game. And Bill Woes, there it is. You going to PSU. We are going to Penn State. So in case you didn't know that, we are going to be at the Penn State game, myself, Justin, Ryan from Locked On Badgers. So hit us up. We'll be posting stuff as it gets closer where we're going to be. We'll definitely have another, bar meetup on Regent Street, most likely, as we've done in years past.
Bo Dragon, I'm going to read this comment before we shut this off, just because it needs to be read. They are worse now than the time of Chris at firing time. No, they're not. That team rolled over and played dead against both Ohio State and Illinois. This team has not remotely ever looked like it has quit on the level that those teams did. So I completely disagree with that. We can argue that the team doesn't look overly talented. That's fine. But this team, the level of quit that was on the team when Chris was fired is not here. And maybe it will come, but it's not there yet. So
I agree. We're nowhere near that. We've got a lot. There are some positives that can be taken from this team with what's going. It's just it's a little bit hard to see them right now. But hopefully this is a big week, and it could be a turnaround week for the trajectory of our season. I mean, let's be honest. Like if we find a way to win at USC, that changes a lot of people's calculus about what this team is right now and what this team can definitely be going forward. With that, we will leave it there. We'll be back for our midweek quick hit, three big things episode going into USC, and again next weekend. Justin, see you next time. And as always, on Wisconsin.
On Wisconsin.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoy the show, subscribe to our YouTube channel at The Bucky Report or The Bucky Report Podcast from wherever you get your content. Until next time, on Wisconsin.